Listen, I can talk to you because I've been on television now.
That's my viewpoint. I'm Peter Nolan. Woke up this morning with the blahs, moaning and groaning into the exclamation, "My God, it's happened." I'd like to send the legislators, Mayor Byrne and Governor Thompson, a message. In my years as a newsman, I have come into contact with all kinds of police officers all over the country. Chicago cops are a special breed. There's few that you feel lukewarm about. You either love them or hate them. That's my viewpoint. I'm Peter Nolan.
Thank you, Peter.
Yes.
And thank you for watching That's the News. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
I got a job as a summer replacement writer in Chicago at NBC.
Yeah.
So we packed up and came out here, and I was able to go. They had told me, they said, it's only a temporary job, but it looks like we're expanding. And they were really, news was going gangbusters in those days.
Somewhere out there on the cold streets of Chicago, there stands a policeman who defied Mayor Jane Byrne and got away with it. The mayor is looking for him. The superintendent of police is looking for him, but so far, the dragnet has turned up nothing.
I was kind of new. I was probably, by then I was maybe 30 years old or close to 30. But I was young, and when I became an on-air reporter after being a writer, I was, you know, can I do this? You know, am I good enough? And I remember they would send you out to get Mayor Richard J. Daley, because you couldn't go in and interview him. You could only, if he had a news conference, you could go and ask questions. So they would want to get, and he was kind of a, by this time, I don't know, iconic, I hate that word, but you know, figure in politics. And they would sometimes send me out to his house or over to City Hall. We'd wait and stop him and see if he'd take a couple questions. And I would get him out at his house, and you know, I remember I'd ask him something like, well, Mr. Mayor, President Nixon has, they're bombing Hanoi in Vietnam, and I said, well, how do you feel about that? And he'd say, oh, we're so, he had these hushed tones. He says, we're praying for our boys and girls and that are in harm's way, and we're saying a prayer, and we're hoping that everybody will be okay, and and then he'd get in the car and roll off, and I'd get a call from the assignment desk, and they'd say, did you get Daley? Did you get Daley? And I'm thinking, well, yeah, I got Daley, but I don't know, he didn't really make any news or anything. They'd say, get that film into the lab right away. Anyway, I'd get Daley, and then he'd be on the 10 o'clock news, and I'd come to work the next day and walk in the newsroom. A couple of people would say, hey, nice job on the Daley interview. And I'm thinking, I think I could do this. Isn't that but I found out that Mayor Daley had become such a father figure, and he had been around. He had helped elect presidents, President Kennedy and President Lyndon Johnson loved Mayor Daley. So anyway, if you got Daley, and I found out years later from one of his bodyguards, he said, you know, Pete, you approached him in the right way. He said, he wouldn't even speak because people run up and with the mic and hit him. He said, you would come up and I would. I'd say to him, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, could we talk to you for a minute, you know, real soft sell. And he'd sit, and he would stop. So at any rate, they sent me out to chase him many, many times. And that's all you had is to get him. Didn't matter if he answered any questions. If he just whatever he had to say, it was news. NBC was really, I was there the first week I got there, Martin Luther King was assassinated. And there was rioting in Chicago. Then in May, Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. Democratic convention, that was pretty wild. I was still inside as a writer, but I witnessed all the film. I mean, I was screening all the film. And so I saw, they called it a police riot, but the demonstrators were not too good either. Nobody was on the side of the angels. But what happened was there were a lot of innocent bystanders, kids that came in from the suburbs to see what was going on, and the police got out of control too, and were knocking them around. So it was pretty wild, and but they, you know, it was. You see a lot of this today when people are angry about, I don't know what, in those days the young people were angry about the war in Vietnam, and for good reason. You know, it was, people were getting killed and nobody really knew for what reason. They didn't, you know, so.
Let's face it, the real way to peace is through hugging and kissing. That's my viewpoint. I'm Peter Nolan.
I spent a lot of time covering the city council, and then I was sent to Springfield a lot to cover the state legislature. And what I find is different from today is in Springfield in those days, and I'm talking about the 1970s, Republicans and Democrats got along a little better. They were at opposing sides, different views on how to do things, on policy, but they compromised. They would, I'll give you this, you give me that, and they were friendly. I think today the politicians are so angry at each other, and they want to smear the other side, and it's just, it's, I think, a very difficult time. But I remember in those days they could get things done, mainly through compromise.
As he approaches age 75, it is a good time for Representative Davis to look back on the years. Springfield, the capital city where Abraham Lincoln first served.
And then they decided they wanted me back at City Hall. I went back there because Jane Byrne was elected the first woman mayor of Chicago, and she was a character, and there was a lot of news with her. Then they had this great election afterwards when she was running for re-election, where Daley's son ran against her, and also a congressman named Harold Washington. And Harold Washington beat the two of them in the primary, and then later won the general election and became the first black mayor of Chicago. I wrote a book about it. It was a crazy campaign, and so after that I kind of decided I wanted to get out of the business, and I got into public relations, and I had a partner. I wrote a play about Chicago politics that was called The 51st Ward.
The world will long acclaim the mythical reality of the 51st Ward. It is a funny play by Peter Nolan.
Saturday at 6 on Channel 5.
And the guy who produced my play, we went in business. His name was Mike Houlihan, and we had a business called Nolan Houlihan Limited. We were very limited. We said that. But we had clients. We had our big client was the Plumbing Council. We did press for the St. Patrick's Day Parade, which they ran. And then I kind of wound my way into retirement.
I forgot one basic rule of great art: never poke fun at the patrons. That's my viewpoint. I'm Peter Nolan. Just a routine transfer, putting these guys 30 miles away from their home base, part of Mayor Byrne's neighborhood improvement program. That's my viewpoint. I'm Peter Nolan. The union leaders who decided to do it that way ought to be run out of town. That's my viewpoint. I'm Peter Nolan. Don't lose too much sleep. The card game goes on. That's my viewpoint. I'm Peter Nolan.
I'll forget about unity bashes and forget whether they're smiling and shaking
When it
hands.
isn't news anymore.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter.